why are we having this session today? Why are we here? So there are about 5 or 6 kind of context pieces that we wanted just to kind of share with you. So I'll take you through the first two, the hand over to colleagues. So Sarah, do you want to just move on to the next slide, please? That would be great. So firstly, we're here because youth work and is part of Scottish education. It helps to deliver curriculum entitlements for children and young people. It helps to ensure that there are opportunities for young people across all 4 contexts and to maximise opportunities for young people to develop across the 4 capacities. In the work that we've been doing, what we've seen across the country, youth work can be key to some engaging with learning for some young people. Youth work is also really important as part of the Scottish Attainment Challenge. So YouthLink delivers one of the national programmes. Our national programme is tasked with strengthening collaboration between youth work and schools to ensure that every young person who needs it has access to youth work to help them reach their potential. And next slide, please. And I'm going to hand over to Karen to talk us through the next bits of context setting.
If we just move on, there we go, thank you. Just for 1 second. So the coherence across the suite of guidance launched in 2022 reinforces the importance of collaboration, including the speech bubble in the centre of the slide from the PEF guidance, which states, alongside schools, youth work improves the well-being, readiness to learn and educational outcomes of children and young people. So the introduction of the Strategic Equity Funding, or shortened to SEF, which hopefully we'll all be aware of, now provides all 32 local authorities with the opportunity to invest in approaches to achieving its overarching mission of tackling the poverty-related attainment gap. So the guidance to support the use of SEF clearly outlines the strategic and operational importance of collaboration and partnerships to improve outcomes for our children and young people. The earlier involvement of our partners, including those from Community Learning and Development, CLD, or the third sector, can have a greater impact on our short, medium and long-term outcomes as a result of joint planning to agree shared ambition, expectations for staffing, who's doing what, roles and responsibilities, timelines and a framework for evaluation. So we're all from the school of thought that expecting education alone to tackle the poverty-related attainment gap in isolation is unachievable. Therefore, the SEF and PEF guidance scaffolds the contribution from partners and wider stakeholders being crucial for local and systemic change. And this is upheld through the governance of SEF through what we now know as the Framework for Recovery and Accelerating Progress, which really reinforces the collective commitment to equity in education by encouraging partnership working and collaboration at all levels of our education system with local and third sector partners. It requires local authorities to set stretch aims for progress in closing the poverty-related attainment gap, which we'll be reporting on in 25-26. And that really reinforces our accountability whilst encouraging our empowerment for how the challenge is delivered locally and what progress might look like in each of our local areas. Finally, some local authorities have set core and core plus stretch aims with youth work partnerships to accelerate progress for the SAC, and we have evidence of that coming through our national summary reporting as well. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. So our collective ambitions are deepened further through our shared respective self-evaluation and inspection frameworks, and they quality assure both education and community learning and development. So HIGIAS 4 exemplifies features of our highly effective practice through Quality Indicator 2.7, which ensures the delivery of learning pathways to meet, or as part of that includes the delivery of learning pathways to meet the needs of all our children and young people. Other partners with specialist expertise and additional support needs also will work alongside our schools to remove barriers to learning and ensure all our children and young people experience success in school and beyond school. And this shares themes with, if you move over to the next slide, please, Sarah, with our CLD colleagues with How Good Is Our CLD, where we've got QI Quality Indicator 3.2 Partnership Working and 5.2 Leading People in Developing Partnerships. So just as a summary, the value of our collaborations and partnerships are equally measured and weighted against what we put into them, as well as what we expect out of them. And our policy and our guidance and frameworks provides us with the opportunity to positively work within them and evaluate their success and respond to need. So I'll now move over to the next speaker. Is that back to yourself, Marielle?
It is, thanks, Karen. And I suppose the last bit of context that we're all working within is around education reform. You know, it's this pivotal point for education that could really transform the education experience for every children and young people. A chance to really get it right for every child and lift young people out of poverty and show every learner that they matter. So it's quite exciting, and we're all sitting waiting on what that's going to look like next and what bits are going to be taken forward. I'm really encouraged that the reports and recommendations coming out of all the various aspects have reinforced the need for stronger collaboration, hence why we're here, and about the importance of access to youth work, whether that's about pastoral care or in terms of providing children and young people with the broad range of opportunities that they need. Next slide, please, Sarah. And it's not just us saying that in these reports. Young people agree with us. So as part of the national discussion, we worked with over 700 young people and their youth workers who said exactly the same thing about how important youth work was as part of their education journey, and that they developed really important skills for learning life and work through youth work that are just as valuable to them, they felt, as the more formal qualifications in learning through school, and wanted recognition of that, and that young people should be able to access youth work during the school day. Next slide, please, Sarah. So we wanted to share with you some of the key learning from our national programme. We've done quite a bit of work across the system, which is showing us that there's some key features of effective collaboration. So you'll see there, yes, that they've got, they're jointly planning and evaluating, and that the voice of young people is essential. But what is really important is these foundations of mutual trust and respect. So for me, it's been a journey about, yes, some really practical changes and things that can be put in place, but also one of culture and changing mindsets. Next slide, please. So one of these ideas is about a common language, and how we've been working around the common language of skills to support strength and collaboration. Lorna's going to explain a wee bit about the significance of that.
Thank you, Marielle. Yeah, this slide here just highlights some of the key messages from the Building of the Curriculum 4 document, which is a focus on skills for learning, skills for life, and skills for work. So first of all, the development of skills is essential to learning and education to help young people to become successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. So those 4 capacities still, very, very relevant. The skills and attributes which children and young people develop should provide them with a sound basis for their development as lifelong learners in their adult, social and working lives, enabling them to reach full potential. All children and young people are entitled, as part of the entitlements in Curriculum for Excellence, for opportunities for developing skills for learning, skills for life and skills for work. And the skills are relevant right from the early years onto the senior phase of learning, and obviously beyond as well. The skills should be developed across all curriculum areas, including in interdisciplinary studies. And it's really important that young people are aware of and understand the value of the skills that they're developing. And sometimes we need to, as youth workers or teachers or educators, we need to make that link for them and let them know what the relevance of different types of skills are. The different contexts for learning provide opportunities and motivation for learners to develop their work, and this could be through experiences of the world of work, enterprise experiences, so on. It's also important that, excuse me, partnership working is really, really valued. And in fact, one of the kind of key messages in BTC 4, and I'm just going to read it as it is in the document, is that Curriculum for Excellence can best be delivered through partnership working. And that partnership working is in bold in the document, as it should be. All establishments should work with partners and share a common understanding and a common language around skills development and application. Together, they should plan and deliver learning and other experiences which meets the needs of individual children and young people. Back to you, Marielle.
Thanks, Lorna. Next slide, please, Sarah. For the past couple of years, YouthLink and the youth work sector have been on a bit of a journey in terms of recognising our responsibilities in terms of providing those opportunities for young people to develop and recognise skills, and to think about how we can work with other partners in education to plant opportunities across the curriculum. So what you're looking at is the National Youth Work Outcomes and Skills Framework. Youth workers work to a set of 7 national youth work outcomes that help young people to understand their progress. What we did was we created a set of core skills that help young people to understand their progress towards those outcomes. For me, what's really important is that we've provided young people with a language to recognise and describe those small but significant steps. You know, we've all worked with young people for whom they've made really significant progress for them, but it's not something that they're going to get a Nat 4 or a Nat 5 for, but it's been hugely crucial in terms of their ability to overcome barriers, to engage with learning, to make progress in terms of development of skills. So that for us is vitally important. We provided young people with a language in order to talk about some of those steps that were really crucial to them in their journey. And youth workers use this framework as a tool alongside reflective conversations and other kind of support structures to help young people think about their progress. It's also really being used by the youth work sector as part of self-evaluation and ongoing quality improvement. And we're using it in youth work and school partnerships as a common language across contexts and settings to help practitioners plan that curriculum and measure the impact of collective activity, whether that's kind of youth work and what's happening within the school, so that we can really understand what the data is telling us in terms about what's working for whom and in what circumstances. Next slide, please. Some of the ways that we've been embedding this skills framework into the way that we've been working through our national programme and supporting practitioners. So we've been doing a lot of work with Education Scotland colleagues, supporting their work around curriculum innovation, and in particular been working with the school in Clackmannanshire, who were interested in developing a bespoke approach to recognising achievement across contexts and settings for young people. So we've been supporting them to think about how that would work in their context, and not just about ticking box to say this is where we've got to in terms of, you know, the number of young people that have increased their confidence or leadership skills, but actually thinking about what does this mean then for young people, how we help them to understand and articulate their development, how we are helping them to develop profiling skills, and what that means in terms of that wider curriculum innovation piece around personal pathways and project-based learning, and what we're trying to do about building a cohesive approach to profiling across the curriculum. Next slide, please, Sarah. I'm going to hand over to John.
Thanks, Marielle. Hello, everybody. Another piece of work that we've been working together with YouthLink on that we wanted to tell you about was a series of collaborative inquiries in the West region through the West Partnership Regional Improvement Collaborative. And you can see up on the screen over 2 phases of 12 school and CLD youth work partnerships that were part of that process. So really bringing practitioners together from the school side and from the CLD youth work side to reflect on their partnerships, look at what's working, look at some of the challenges and learn from each other. Sounds very simple, but actually quite a powerful process for people to have the time to do that. Next slide, Sarah, please. So when we looked at across those partnerships, one of the very interesting things was the range of work that youth workers were involved in with and in and around school communities. So we had examples where youth workers are involved in, for example, delivering youth awards with school, with making inputs to PSE curriculum. There were examples of youth workers heavily involved in supporting transitions from primary to secondary school. We had examples of youth workers involved in targeted support for young people struggling with mainstream or on the edges of care. And we also saw examples of where youth workers were bringing other organisations from the community closer to the school, whether that was arts organisations or other ones. We had examples of youth workers working with parents and families to support young people's learning, a mixture of one-to-one support, small group work. So basically, the youth workers were involved in a broad range of activity. If you want to find out more about that, the stuff that's up on the screen, there's some little summaries from some of the partnerships, and I've just shared the link. You'll find that on the West Partnership website right at the bottom. Those were the kind of things we were trying to achieve, a clearer shared understanding of the impacts of young people. What makes a difference for young people if youth work and school partners are planning effectively together and evaluating what's happening, looking at the approaches and models that people were using and trying to build relationships. In the second phase of the process, we had more of a specific focus on looking at the methods that schools and youth workers were using for gathering shared evidence of impact on young people. Next slide, please, Sarah. So there are some of the enablers and some of the challenges, and you'll recognise a lot of those from what Marielle has just been saying in terms of the national messages. Strong message about encouraging school leaders to be very visible and promoting partnerships. And actually, one of the brilliant resources that YouthLink have put together is some films where we have head teachers involved in that. I'd encourage you to look up the one from Maureen Daniel and Kirkintilloch High, who was one of the ones involved here. Just the evangelistic almost kind of role that a head teacher can play in terms of building the value of partnerships and that parity of esteem that Marielle was talking about. So I won't go through all those because I think they're quite similar to what we've heard already in terms of relationships. The joint planning and the review and evaluation informed by young people is interesting, can be seen both as an enabler and a challenge. And I think that meant it's important for people to understand how their planning processes work together. So a lot of the partnerships were finding it interesting just to understand timescales, when school improvement plans had to be done, when youth work plans were being done. People were looking at really interesting stuff around how partnerships were funded, and there was a whole range of different models there, using PEF and SEF funding and also mainstream funding, and also looking at third sector involvement. So I would encourage you to check out the work on that inquiry, and I suppose if you don't know already how those kind of things are working in your area, then it's an interesting place to start. I'll hand you back to Marielle, I think.
Thanks, John. Next slide, please. So just two more examples that we wanted to share with you. This one about embedding youth voice, like John was talking about there, kind of making sure that youth voice is part of planning. So we've worked with a school and their youth work partners in Edinburgh to pilot a youth-led collaborative approach to understanding and improving attendance and engagement in learning. Like it's self-explanatory. School and Edinburgh City Council were, like a number of us, concerned to get to the bottom of the drop in attendance and difficulties around engagement as learning since COVID. And Gracemount High School really keen to work with their youth work partners on this. So the youth workers took responsibility for working with young people who were at risk of or had disengaged from learning, and really got to the bottom of understanding what those challenges were. And then YouthLink supported the school to work with the youth work organisation and the young people to create a bit of an action plan around that. This has been seen as a model of good practice and is now being rolled out across another couple of school communities in Edinburgh. So we're really excited about how we can build on this youth-led approach to really taking forward some of the challenges that we've got across the system. Next slide, I'm going to hand over to Lorna to talk about the work that we've been doing around supporting the development of a shared language.
Thanks, Marielle. Yeah, this is a resource that we developed about a couple of years ago now, and it really was co-created between YouthLink Scotland and Education Scotland. We had some attainment advisors, we had John, who's our youth work lead officer at EdScot, and we also had a CLD inspector as part of that writing team. And we really wrote it, it aligns very well with the How Good Is Our School and How Good Is Our CLD quality indicators on partnership working. It has a few activities. It's a very light resource. It's just a few pages long. It has an activity called Whose Role Is It? And it's a quiz, which is quite fun to do. And it's about developing knowledge and understanding of each other's role, the role of formal education and the role of youth work. And it highlights areas of shared responsibility as well as the impact it can have on practice. And it's accompanied by a slideshow with some kind of background in terms of the answers to those quiz questions. There's a second activity called myth busting, which is always a fun one to do. There are some controversial myths and then some challenge questions to engage in discussion around those myth busters. And again, that helps develop better understanding of the roles that help us work towards a common language to track progression, achievement, and to measure that impact together. It can be used at the beginning of a partnership to help develop that partnership, really understand the roles, make sure we are speaking a common language. And it can also be used to support or evaluate a developing partnership as well. And it also includes a little glossary, which has formal education and CLD terminology on it as well. Thanks, Marielle.
Thanks, Lorna. That was a really exciting piece of work. I really enjoyed working with Education Scotland colleagues on not just developing the resource, but facilitating sessions with educators from a formal education background and youth work. And what I think really struck us all was when you create that space, that safe space, and taking people away from, you know, their the challenges of the day-to-day work and sitting down and actually taking time to reflect and to be honest and say, you only know as much as you know. You might have been working with somebody for 4 years, but actually, do you really understand what their job is? And that's nobody's fault. That's just the reality of day-to-day work. And so it was a really insightful process, being able to sit down with practitioners and to be able to thrash out some of those, where some of the challenges and some of the kind of clash points were coming from, and then to help practitioners then create a bit of an action plan about, okay, well, what are our key strengths and how we're going to build on some of that. Next slide, please. Sarah, last slide is really just to say that all of the professional learning resources and case studies of good practice can be found on YouthLink's website, and I'll put a link to that in the chat. And the last slide, please, Sarah, is just to highlight one of our latest resources that's about using pupil equity funding to support partnerships with youth work. There's some really nice case studies from across the country there, including a couple of videos, and the one I think that, no, not the one that John mentioned, but we've got one from Edinburgh and one from Falkirk, video case studies there, where head teachers, young people and youth workers talking about the impact that investing PEF in youth work has made in terms of their partnership. So I think, we've almost kept to time, I think, Sarah, so I'll hand back to you.
I will try and do that again with my microphone not on mute. So thank you very much for Marielle and to colleagues for sharing that presentation. We now have some protected time where Rebecca will whisk us away into our breakout rooms where we will be using a Jamboard. So the Jamboard will be posted within the chat panel, but there will also be colleagues within this team that will help facilitate those discussions. So hopefully in the next couple of minutes, we will start to be whisked away to our individual groups. There should be some opportunity at the end to have a chat with regards to any burning questions. So if there is anything, your facilitators can feed that back at the end.